Go.
Hello and welcome to Point of View. I'm Ryan, joined today by Elliot. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I could be doing better. So the Blues got eliminated yesterday.
That sucks. You kind of expected that, though, right?
Well, I mean, I figured they'd at least fight to try to defend their championship.
Yeah, I hear that.
And the Cardinals lost yesterday, and the Pacers are going to get swept by the Miami Heat. So,
Yeah, it is what it is, though.
It's life of growing up as a Midwest sports fan, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So while we're here, I guess everybody knows us from Cannon Snakes and the Olympic O, or any of our listeners do. They all know, I mean, our true loves are Roma. You're Roma for you, obviously, and Arsenal. But could you explain why you love the Celtics? Because I know you're a big Celtics fan, and why you love UConn basketball.
All right. Well, so my stepdad, who passed away a few years ago, all of his family is from the Connecticut area. So when I was growing up and stuff, that was like we had the local teams. We had the Vikings, the Timberwolves, and other stuff. But I never like was roped into that. So when my mom met my stepdad, and he basically I learned about, not learned, but that's all the sort of the teams they supported. I'm a really big fan of basketball. So when the Celtics, they were awful for a while, but yeah, I don't know. I just kind of fell in love with that thing just because it wasn't like the first team I knew about, but it was like the first team that I really got into, not counting Roma. And then the reason I like UConn is all my family members from that sort of area went to UConn or had gone to UConn or just been a UConn basketball sort of thing. So, right. I mean, go ahead.
So that makes sense. I'm born and raised in St. Louis. My family's from St. Louis. So of course you got the Blues. You got the Cardinals. Had the Rams. The reason I'm a Chiefs fan, I'm not for anybody that wonders, I'm not one of those people that just jump on the bandwagon with Patrick Mahomes. That's been there for a long time. When you grow up in St. Louis, we really don't have a football team, so you really get three options. You get the Arizona Cardinals because they have a lot of fans in St. Louis still. Because even though they left, they didn't leave in a way like the Rams did. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
So a lot of people still root for them. You had the Rams, obviously, and then you had the Chiefs. And I just picked the Chiefs because they had the coolest logo.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then my uncle, I didn't really get into basketball until 2008, but it's funny because I fell in love with it. My uncle is from Indianapolis. My aunt met him in 2001. So I remember going to like Pacers games like really early on, like 2003, 2004, getting to see Reggie Miller. I didn't really appreciate the magnitude of what I was witnessing.
Yeah.
Back then. Yeah. But now I like fully appreciate it. So like my uncle just kind of inducted me. When you're from Indiana, it's like religion there. Mm-hmm. It's the closest thing in America. Would you say like European football fans is basketball in Indiana? So
yeah, it comes close. I would say call it Indiana basketball and college football.
Yeah. So I mean, I didn't really have a choice but to be a Pacers fan.
Right.
But yeah, I've been stuck with that awful team choking every year. I know achieving in the first round. I'm just kidding. I love you. I love you, Victor Oladipo. I love you. I love you, Savonis. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's a rough life.
Yeah, I get that.
So to start our show, I know obviously you're a Celtics fan, but I know you also do support the Timberwolves. The number one overall pick. They get Anthony Edwards. Surely they had Wiggins. They traded him. Yeah. But Karl Anthony Towns. Surely. Maybe this is the time that they finally turn it around and get it, like maybe, I don't know, like 4, 5, 6 years straight in the playoffs and maybe have a deep run or two?
I hope so. I'm sitting here and thinking about this draft, and my entire mentality is please don't mess this up. Like Anthony Edwards is the obvious pick here, but if they don't take him, I'll be okay with Wiseman. But I don't want them to take Ball, because the circus is going to come to town, and everything. But they have some good stuff though, because Towns, I don't really like his attitude on the defensive end. I feel like he doesn't, like, sometimes he's not asserting himself enough, so that's a concern. So if they don't draft Edwards, who they absolutely should draft, I'd be okay with Wiseman because he's he's a 7'1" power forward center they could feed off each other. And then obviously we have D'Angelo Russell, which is why I don't think drafting Ball makes sense. Besides the fact that he's sort of, I think he plays point guard. I don't think it'd be horrible, but it's just not the ideal pick right here. But then they have good pieces. I like Jared Culver. I think next year he's going to take a big step. And then they have D'Angelo Russell, who, when healthy, is incredible. The team's awful, but getting to see him play a few times at the end of the last season, I thought he played really, really well. And then they have a good chemistry between him and Kat because they've known each other forever. So my thing is, they just need more depth. They need more guys they can bring off the bench, and so we're not playing with like a 7-man roster where we have a couple good players. And I like the I forgot his name, the guy who we traded when we were making all these crazy trades with Denver. I can't remember his name, but he's been really good. He was averaging like 20 plus end of the regular season. And then there's the good pieces there. I want them to draft the right pick, and then hopefully, I don't know how they do it, if it's free agency or trades, but get some depth that can really help us, because if they're in the Eastern Conference with this team, maybe not as it stands, but I think they could eventually make the playoffs. But in the West, it's going to be more difficult because you got the Suns and Book, who didn't make the playoffs. You got John Moran and the Grizzlies. You have the Pelicans. So there's going to be a lot of other teams that are going to be vibing for that playoff spot. So I think, again, step one, just make the playoffs for the Wolves. Even if they get swept, just get in there. Yeah. Because you want to get in the playoffs regularly. If you become like choking in the playoffs consistently, then we have a different conversation. But they haven't been in the playoffs. I mean, they had that 1 year when they lost to the Rockets in 5. But then before that, it had been like 10, 12 years before they made the playoffs since then, since basically the KG trade. So it's just like, let's just make the playoffs a few times. I'm going to give Ryan Saunders another year. I think he's done a decent job. But if we have a good team or a good enough team to make the playoffs and we don't make the playoffs, then we're going to have to start having that conversation. I hope it works for him because of his dad. It means a lot to Minnesota, and coaching the time they went to the conference finals was big part of KG getting drafted where he did, and he passed away a couple years ago. So he's so important. He's like, we have Malik Sealy in the rafters, and we have Flip Saunders, and KG will be probably joining him shortly. But just because of the relationship that we have with that family, I hope it works for him. Yeah, because we don't want to have to make the decision to get rid of him. But I think he's a good coach. It's just we have to just see what he does, because I think last year he did a good job considering how bad the team was. But so again, I'm hoping it goes well. But I think altogether, the number one pick I think is going to be great. So if they take one of these guys, Edwards or Wiseman, that's great. If they trade the number one pick for Devin Booker, that's great. So I'm open for business at the number one pick. And I'd even be okay with Ball. It's just not my preference. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Can we finally get rid of this idea that the NBA is rigged, because the Knicks had a good chances to get the number one pick the 2 years in a row?
Yeah.
Would you believe that if the Knicks were even decent, it'd be great for the NBA? And yet the number one overall pick the last 2 years with these players coming out has gone to the Pelicans and Timberwolves?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the basketball's just better when the Knicks are winning. So we all want them to be – I mean, I'll be honest, I wanted the Wolves to get the number one pick, but I wanted them to get in the top 3. And then last year, all the teams that were trying to lose, the not the Falcons, the Hawks, the Knicks, I think the Bulls, all these really bad teams that were like losing on purpose, none of them got in the top 3. So this defunks everything, because the teams actually trying to lose are not getting top picks. It's all by randomness and stuff, and it's not rigged. You can say certain parts of the NBA are rigged, but the draft lottery isn't rigged. Just because, I mean, there was a year that Cleveland got the number one pick when LeBron left the first time and came in the second time, but still, I don't think it's rigged. I think it's just bad luck for the Knicks, because it would have been great if they had gotten even like a top 3 pick. Yeah. Because outside of 3, Maybe I think there's 4 potential franchise changers here in this draft, maybe 5. Outside of that, there's not much. So who do you draft at 8 if you're the Knicks? It's just like
Exactly.
they're not like because you have Wiseman, you have Edwards, you have Ball. I'm really high on the Israeli international kid. I think he's special. And then there's one more name I'm not thinking of. But those are the 5 to draft in this draft. Outside of that, there's not much there, which is why I would rather the Celtics trade the 14th pick if we can't get a good player. And I think the Knicks and other teams should consider that too, because once you get out of the cream of the draft, you're not left with a bunch. And that's the problem with the Knicks, because, all right, the 8th pick is whoever, but it's not a guy who's going to change your franchise unless you're in unless you like by coincidence draft like a European kid like Giannis who ends up being a superstar in 3 years. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's unfortunate for them, but at the same time, what can you do?
Oh no, it makes me laugh too, because trust me, I feel bad for Spike Lee. I really do. So much, being a fan of that team.
Yeah.
But it amazes me. Okay. And before we get into the playoffs, you be consistently that bad for that long when you're in that market. And this is my thing. Their owner owns the Rangers too. And I'm not saying the Rangers are world beaters, but they're consistently in the playoffs. They can always attract big free agents. They were in the Cup final a couple years ago.
Yeah.
What do you think it is? And I know the answer is because Dolan doesn't care about hockey. He cares about basketball.
Yeah.
It's the meddlesome in basketball. But even that being said, wouldn't you think you'd be able to attract at least 1 or 2 free agents, or is that man just that toxic?
I think what happened last year is a proof of how toxic he actually is, because it was like the whole buzz about Kyrie and KD, the whole offseason was to the Knicks. No one talked about the Nets until Kyrie's like, you know what, I'd rather play for the Nets. And then the whole narrative changed around where they were going. So the fact they couldn't land one superstar, and they had the money to pay them. KD not only picked the Nets, he like trashed the Knicks on his way to the Nets. And then Kyrie, because he came up with some comments after that about how he was on a podcast with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson and he was talking about the Knicks, and he was just saying, something about all it is a big name. There's not actually, glory attached to it anymore. Because no one in our generation has seen the Knicks win anything. So it's just like that just proves how toxic he is. And then he had the thing where he kicked the thing he did with Charles Oakley, and then he kicked out a fan just for saying sell the team. And it's just like it's
Spike Lee in the elevator.
Yes, exactly. It's just run so poorly that it's just unraveling, and it has for a long time. And I don't know. It's just like. It just seems like and then they hired Tom Thibodeau, which is, I don't understand. So it's just like they're making all the wrong decisions at the same time. And I know they're cleaning up some stuff in the front office where they hired a few guys who have done well, but it just doesn't seem enough. I like the kid they drafted last year, RJ Barrett, who probably would have been the number 1 pick before the college season. So I think he's good. They're thinking maybe trying to get Donovan Mitchell, and maybe that's doable, but it's just a mess over there. And I'm not saying there's other teams that are going through similar stuff, but because there's the big name, that's just the situation they find themselves in.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play there.
I wouldn't either. I love Madison Square Garden. It's a great place to watch basketball and play basketball, presumably. But I still wouldn't want to play there.
Exactly. Now you're obviously a Celtics fan, and they extended Brad Stevens. I know it's a little bit older news. Do you think this is the right move? I mean, I get it. He's got you to Game 7 of the conference finals, and he took Butler to national. He's never been able to get over the hump.
Yeah, well, that's largely because he doesn't operate with people like Kyrie just because of the attention he provides. He works with specific type of superstars. One's like Kemba Walker is a superstar, but he's a quiet guy. He doesn't demand being the man. He doesn't have a lot of ego. So Kemba came into the Celtics last year as their best player. By like Game 10, he was already their second best player, and he accepted that role, and that's why it's worked with Kemba. And then Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown are also, they're not loud, obnoxious, and I'm not saying all superstars are obnoxious, but they don't have the aura of like a James Harden or Russell Westbrook or something who's going to be demanding certain things. I mean, I just think the type of team he has right now is exactly what makes him good. What made him so impressive with Butler is he was getting to the national championship with very minimal NBA players and playing against UConn and then Duke, who they almost beat Duke with that the Gordon Hayward three-pointer. But so it's just like, I think the way it's all being constructed, these are Brad Stevens guys. And I think he's brilliant, just in terms of what he does from like a tactical point of view and the way he can get the best out of certain players. I think it was the right move, because I think Brad Stevens is a top 5 coach in the league. So if you don't extend him, what are you going to get instead? I know Mark Jackson would be a good one. He hasn't coached in a while though, and so Brad Stevens I think is perfect for the Celtics, and I think it was the right move. As far as getting over the hump, I put that more on Danny Ainge than Brad Stevens, because Danny Ainge could have got Paul George, and all he had to give up was, because when Oklahoma City traded for Paul George, they didn't give up that much, and Boston could have done exactly the same thing. So it's just like, that's where they screwed up, is getting that, and I think they mishandled the Kyrie situation. He was just poisonous to that locker room. And I still like Kyrie, but it's just like, it didn't work. But this works. And I don't know what's going to happen the rest of the playoffs. There's a chance they make the finals here, because we haven't seen the Bucks do what they're expected to do. So, and I know it's only been a year and they should make the finals, but at the same time, it just seems like this is one of these teams that could end up making the finals. I'm not sure they will, because Toronto's excellent, and so is Milwaukee when they're at their best. But still, with that team and with that coach, they have a legit chance of possibly getting there. So we'll see what happens with the whole Brad Stevens thing. But I like where it is right now, because, I mean, the Sixers aren't the greatest team, but they're making them look like they shouldn't be in the NBA. That's how bad they've looked. Yeah. Last night they looked okay. That was a close game, but game 2 especially, they were up by like.
Oh, they embarrassed them.
Yeah, they were up by like 50 points at one point or something like that. They were out. They had a run where they outscored them like 69-23 or something. So it's just like, so maybe the Sixers aren't the biggest test, but I think they've done a decent job on Joel Embiid, which is basically their primary star in that team. But I think we'll really see what this team is made of when they play the Raptors, because that's going to be the true telling of how this is. But I'd like them to make the conference finals minimum.
Yes.
And I wouldn't necessarily call it a failure, but it just would have been, it would just have been an underachievement if they don't at least make, because I'm not expecting them to make the finals. Going into the season, I didn't expect them to make the finals, because I figured it'd be Bucks Clippers, or Bucks. I mean, it depends when you ask me, but it's one of the L teams in the Bucks is what I thought the whole time. But I thought, just going through that, I thought the Celtics would at least have a shot at getting there, because I think they're going to match up with the Bucks down the road. But because of the new situation, everything that's happened this season, we'll see what actually happens. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but I think they have a good chance, at least potentially, because Jason Tatum's he's a real deal.
Oh yeah.
The last night,
boy too.
Yeah, he blocked Joel Embiid on that shot at the end of the game last night, and he ended up getting fouled on the way to the basket, and it was like a tie game at that point. And he's gone from a potential star to like a real star, because before Kyrie he was excellent. Then there was a little declining because of being involved with Kyrie in the team, where he just hangs on to the ball for like the whole shot clock. And then this year he's taking an even bigger step. And he's up there with the top players in the league. I don't care what anybody says. He's certainly up there. I'm not even trying to be biased here. He's not in the upper echelons with like Giannis and LeBron and people like that and Kawhi, but he's in that next level with like Paul George and Westbrook and people like that. So it's going to be interesting, but I think he's the guy now. And I think Kemba's kind of accepted that now. Kemba had a great game last night, but he knows that that's the guy. And we also Jaylen Brown, who also was a borderline star too. So he has the stars. It's just not the stars that make a problem. So it's not like a Kyrie or I love LeBron, but LeBron can create problems just because of his overall aura. So Brad Stevens has potentially three superstars that all don't have that sort of impact, where they're more quiet guys who just step on a court and swish.
Yep. Other news. Sacramento Kings finally have gotten rid of Vlade Divac. And I love Vlade Divac. Great player, phenomenal story. But my God, what an atrocious 10 years of GM. You remember they had Boogie Cousins, okay? Do you remember 3 years in a row he drafted Willie Cauley-Stein,
Yep.
center, power forward, instead of getting help for Boogie Cousins, signed Costa Kufis, gave him almost $11 million a year, and then Georgios Papagiannis next year. I mean, Kings fans have to be absolutely celebrating this move. Do you think it will finally be a turning point? Because this team plays in the capital of California, another big market.
Yeah.
Big as New York, obviously. Do you think this could be like the turning point where they get some young, exciting players and start pushing for the playoffs?
I think they can, as long as you fix that upstairs, then I think everything. And I'm not sold on Luke Walton. I know he was a great player, or not a great player. He was good as an assistant with the Warriors, and I thought he did well in the Lakers considering all the distractions that surrounded it. I'm not sure he's the guy, so that's my first point. But I have faith in the Kings because of what's their point guard's name?
Fox.
Yeah, Darian Fox. He's as good as some of these guys making the All-Star games. He's sensational. So this is the type of player they should have drafted when Boogie was there, because now Fox is the man there, and they have other good pieces. They have the names are escaping me. He went to Oklahoma. It'll come back to me. They have good shooters off the bench. They have, I think they have Harrison Barnes, who's won a championship. They've gotten there's a lot of good pieces there. I think what they need is maybe not a superstar, but like a star. So maybe they go get, I know TJ Warren's been absolutely incredible during the bubble, but someone like, maybe not him, but somebody like that who can help him a little bit. Maybe if I don't know, I can't think of anyone on the top of my head, but just someone who can give him a little bit more help, give maybe 20-point game score. Doesn't have to be, maybe like a Julius Randle or something like that. Just someone that can help him a little bit. But I love Fox, so as long as he's there and they're drafting better, then I think they should be okay. It's really unfortunate because it would be great if they had a top 5 pick in this draft, just because the draft's been weaker each year, and it taps out at 5. So anyone you draft below 5 isn't going to be who you want them to be. So it just, if they could get someone like a young player, maybe not in this draft, but someone of an age under 23, I don't see them making like a blockbuster move, but maybe signing a free agent that maybe isn't as hyped up as some of the bigger ones, and then maybe they could do something. But I think Fox is the key, and they just got to make better decisions. When it comes to draft, when it comes to everything else, it's just like, if they start making better decisions, they're going to be a better team, because I think they have an all-star point guard. He hasn't made the all-star, but in my mind, he's an all-star. So you know what I mean?
Yeah. Why do you think the draft's been getting weaker every year? Do you think it's bad development in college? Do you think it's the one and done? Like, honestly, because I mean, I kind of think the one and done thing kind of hurts your development. I think there's something to be said for saying you're staying your sophomore year in college, even up to like your junior or senior. Like, look at a player like Joakim Noah, would have never been even a pick in the draft if he would have left Florida his first years, stayed for his senior year, was a top pick, and turned into one of the best centers over 5 years. So do you think there's something to be said for staying in college a little bit longer?
I think
going over to Europe for a year and playing.
I think Europe is the one. So in this generation of college basketball, you got the 5. Last year was maybe 3. I thought there were 3 like really good players coming into the draft. I wasn't high on Cam Reddish and some of the other guys that are sort of sprinkled in there, but I liked Zion and RJ and Ja. and that was it. Like going
Yeah.
into the draft. So in this generation of college basketball, if you don't get one of those guys, draft international. I don't care if the prospects rank 27th on the big board. If you have the 6th pick, you draft an international player, because outside of the 5 best players from this draft, you're not going to get, because at least with the international player, you have a chance to do something. So, and not everyone's going to turn into Doncic and Giannis, but you could get someone like Patty Mills, or the Spurs have done a good job with Ginobili or Parker, and Patty Mills is
Even
a
like
superstar, but
even like a Hito Turkoglu.
Yeah, for sure. Or just even like I know he played but just someone who's played in Europe. That's why I think, especially in this draft, LaMelo Ball is going to get drafted higher because he was in Australia instead of the college basketball. And I know he only played 12 games, but just to answer your question, I think the one and done is ruining college basketball, because we had guys like back in the old days, like Joakim Noah, the Florida team, Joakim Noah, Corey Brewer, just a bunch of players from that. They played 3 years, even if they could have left after 1 year. There's some North Carolina guys who stayed a long time. Ty Law stayed like 3 years. And then you always have some guys who just need to leave, like Anthony Davis and Kevin Durant. Those are like the only 2 players that I've seen. Zion too, and maybe RJ stayed too, actually. So that's another example. RJ, he wasn't playing at, or not RJ, John Morant stayed 2 years playing at Morgan State, which isn't a big school. So I think just the one that is ruining it, because you can't build a team in college basketball with people leaving year in and year out. You have guys like Trey Burke who left after a year, and that didn't go out well for him. We have the guy who used to who went to school down the road from Minnesota, Trey Jones, Tyus Jones, who came into the league and did nothing until his second to last year in Minnesota. And then, I mean, there's countless, ways to highlight the problem with the whole thing. But I just think the college basketball stuff, Villanova is the one team that does it right. I'll draft a Villanova player anytime, because people who go to Villanova don't leave after a year. Most players who go to that program intend to stay. Where if you go to Duke, Kentucky, even like Kansas, North Carolina, you get 1 year, 1 out. Wiggins, Jabari Parker, guys
Which
like that.
has been an absolute train wreck for him.
For both of them.
Yeah.
They're both busts. Wiggins has a chance to not be one because he's in Golden State with that ownership group, with that owner, with that coach, with Steph and Clay. So I think he can turn it into something. But those two just haven't panned out. And I thought those two were going to be excellent coming out just because they look so great. But it's just like,
I thought Jabari Parker would have won an MVP within his first 4 years. That's how high I was on him.
I thought he was incredible. So I wanted him to stay another year just so he could develop his game more. So it's just like, it's one of those things. And some players should just, this is why I kind of think they should open up the high school thing again, because people who are going to college are going to stay and, be there. They're not just going for half the year, because these college kids are going there for half the season and they're going to the draft. They're not there for school. So it's just like, I don't know. Go ahead.
A brand.
Yeah, exactly. And, people like Zion should have left after a year. KD should have left after a year. But
Zion should have been in the NBA the year before that, though.
Yeah, that's fair. So just there's guys who do justify themselves being, beyond the college stuff. But these guys going in and out, like all these Kentucky guys who go from, like the Harrison brothers. Do you remember those guys at Kentucky? Twins who were really good in college. They left too early, and I don't think either one is on an NBA roster. So that just proves some of these guys are leaving after 1 year to be a second-round pick. We're to average 1.7 points your first year. So it's just like, I just wish guys would stay more. Michael Jordan stayed for 3 years. And if the GOAT is staying 3 years, I think others should as well. You know what I mean? Patrick Ewing stayed 4. So it's just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Speaking of like the guys like staying for 1 year, I do give a lot of credit to Roy Williams. Like, would you agree with that? Great, phenomenal college coach.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Calipari's and Bill Selfs. I mean,
Yeah.
do you think they're good coaches, or do you just think that they're good? They have great teams because of circumstance.
Well, I think Calipari is a good teacher. That doesn't make him a great coach because Calipari's guys come. He's preparing for them for the NBA. So I think in terms of between Self and Calipari, I give Calipari more credit because his mentality isn't to win the title necessarily. It's to progress his team. Sometimes he gets lucky with an Anthony Davis and they win it anyways.
He's only won one title, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, but if you go back early in his career, what he did at UMass and what he did at Memphis, so his CV is littered before that. But this season, but the reason he's only won one title is because he's taking these young guys and trying to make them into NBA players. So they go from that to this, and a lot of his guys do well early in the NBA. The good ones end up doing. He had Devin Booker. He's a star. Cat's a star. Joel Okafor wasn't great. Oh no, he wasn't at Kentucky. Never mind. But a lot of guys. And this year, Tyler Hero was a 14th pick, and it's just unbelievable. So it's just like his guys tend doing, but it's because he's teaching them. He's not trying to win a championship. If he does, by coincidence, great. But he's not doing that because again, John Wall, Boogie Cousins, a lot of them are going through this and doing well in the NBA. And I'm not a fan of John Wall at all, but he was good out the gate when he started in the NBA. So it's just like he's doing a service for the young guys, but that doesn't necessarily he's going to be winning in college basketball. Where Bill Self, I think he's trying to win championships, and he's not molding young guys for the NBA. He's trying to win. So maybe I think he deserves – they both deserve some criticism, but I think he probably deserves a little more just because his idea isn't trying to get these guys in the NBA and making them great. It's to win. And if he's not winning, the criticize is more justified because we know what Calipari is doing. So it's a different roadmap. Yeah.
And if you look at like the last four winners of the national title, it's been Villanova, North Carolina, Villanova again, and Virginia. And even that North Carolina team didn't have that many NBA players on it. It was Roy Williams. I forget the Virginia and Villanova coach's name, but it was those three guys building a proper squad of juniors and seniors to go out there and win championships.
Yeah.
And
I think
I agree with you.
Go ahead.
Do you think why do you think though, and this is like a serious question, why do you think Virginia and Villanova have been so successful over the past few years? Is it really because they're picking, instead of like the top 5-star recruits, they're picking like 3.5, 4-star recruits, bringing them in and trying to keep them there and develop and win things?
Yeah. So I'm not sure about Virginia that much. I know they're good, but they're for a long time they're like a great regular season team that would fade down the stretch. But for Villanova, Jay Wright doesn't recruit players who are going to leave after 1 year. So when he's recruiting someone, that goes into what he's saying, because he's not going to recruit someone who's going to leave after a year. So what Jay Wright does is he wants at the minimum, you say for 2 years. Those are the players he's going after. So that doesn't necessarily mean he's going after the highest prospect. He's not going to go after Zion and RJ Barrett and people like that because they're going to leave after 1 year. They're not going to come back. So I think with Villanova, I think it goes into the recruiting, and he knows. At least I have these guys for at least 2 years, because I think there's been Villanova sophomores who've left, but they're not jumping after freshman year. Even like Randy Foy and Roy Hibbert back in the day. Those guys.
Down.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I mean. Oh, sorry. I got them confused. My bad. But just play. But Randy Foy was on Villanova though, and a few others. So it's just like those guys. And I'm not saying that he was the greatest player ever or anything like that, but he stayed for a couple of years before he made that move to the NBA. And so a lot of guys that play for teams like that are staying, and so that the coach knows that they have something to work with.
Yep. And even guys like Tom Izzo, Michigan State, he developed. Look at Draymond Green.
Yeah. Who knew that was going to happen?
He gave to him.
Right. I had no idea that he was going to be that. And we can get onto this later, but like he's had an incredible career for himself. I think he's excellent. I think if he doesn't go to Golden State, his story looks different.
Yeah.
But he's still, regardless, he's still worth more than he would have been if he wasn't coached by Tom Izzo. So I think Draymond Green isn't Draymond Green on the Grizzlies or someone like that. He's that good because of the Warriors, which confuses people of how valuable he actually is. But
he's not an NBA player without Tom Izzo.
Yeah, and he's like, I think he's a little above average in fairness. He looks great on Golden State, and probably he gets into the Hall of Fame just because he was on that team. But I won't agree. You know, when that happens, I'm not agreeing with it. But he's a better player in the NBA in the things that he does really well because of Tom Izzo. And he was a second-round pick, and he knows every player that was drafted in front of him, which is part of the mental part of how great he was.
Yeah, but, you know, I disagree with that. I think Draymond Green is a surefire. He's the best defensive player we've had since Rodman.
Yeah, but I think if he's drafted by the Timberwolves, he's not having that career. He's not.
Well, I agree with that. I think Steve Kerr also is a phenomenal coach.
Yeah.
Things like that help. But Michael Jordan didn't win 6 titles till they brought Phil in. So, you know, it takes a team effort.
No, he does. He's good. But like what I'm saying is, if you placed him in a different team, he doesn't. Yeah. He's gonna be like I'll be generous. He's like an 8, 6, 9 guy, but he's not, or something like that. A low, like a single, double sort of thing, but not. He's not winning Defensive Player of the Year if he's not drafted by the Warriors. So the Warriors helped him so much, and I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I don't see him as a max player or someone that. But he's a great defensive player. But I think he still would have been a good defensive player. It's just the fact that he was on the Warriors helped him so much because of all the things I mentioned. They have an A+ owner, coach, and best player. So it just comes down to everything. But again, he's good because of Tom Izzo. He's probably not making the league if he doesn't have him, or if he goes to. I mean, I'm guessing he didn't have a lot of offers coming out of high school. So if he'd gone to one, maybe that was his only one, but you know what I mean. So it just greatly affected his career because he had a coach like that.
Yeah. Another topic I wanted to get into, and we're all over the place today, but I just wanted to have like a big basketball discussion because
that's cool.
Playoffs after this.
Right.
Our listeners, we're going to give you about another 30, 45 minutes of just playoff talk. But the career's starting to wind down. In the grand scheme of things, where do you place Pop in the greatest coaches? Because for me, he's fighting for the number 1 spot.
Ooh, that's tough. Third, maybe. It's hard though because of the previous. Phil's obviously 1, and then 2. It's basically a tie between Red Auerbach and Pop. But that's a coin flip. And I know the Celtics, when they won all those championships back in the day, there were like 8 teams or whatever.
Yeah.
Still, I think just how good he was as a coach just during that era, same thing with Bill Russell. Bill Russell may not be as highly regarded because of the era he played in, but it's just like the certain things that these 2 guys did together that made them so incredible. But then again, I think Pop is right there with what he did with Duncan and Ginobili and guys like Patty Mills, who probably isn't an NBA player, at least a good one on other teams. And then you have won 5 titles, probably should have won 6 if it wasn't for Ray Allen in the corner and Chris Bosh's rebound. So, I mean, he's right up there. It depends what happens with Kawhi. Because if Kawhi ends up winning multiple titles with the Clippers, then he kind of proves Pop's wrong about one player. But outside of that, it's just one
player, you know.
Right, but if all right, I know this is getting ahead of myself. But if he okay, so he gives up on Kawhi or whatever. Kawhi goes to the Clippers. If he wins 3 in a row, it makes Pop look bad. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it is just one player. But again, he also drafted that one player when no one thought he was going to be that. He traded
God, I remember this trade because as a Pacers fan, this haunts my soul till the day I die.
George something.
Drafted Kawhi Leonard and traded him for George Hill.
Yeah, and then you gave them something else too. But anyway, so that trade is also justifies how great he is as a coach. We'll have to see what happens with Kawhi the rest of his career. But I mean, he's right up there with Phil. I don't feel like Kobe and Michael, but still, they're not winning. It's not like they were sweeping every finals. Phil lost the finals and won with Kobe and won, I think, several others. So
Phil. I think they were 5-2. They lost to the Pistons and the Celtics.
Right. So they lose 2 finals. I'll be honest. The Pistons one is just worse, I think, because they had Shaq and Kobe and all that stuff. But the Celtics that year, the Celtics weren't losing that finals. They had Rondo was becoming a star at the end of that year. So it's just like he had 5 steals in Game 6, and that was one of the most embarrassing final games I've ever seen. But so I don't put that necessarily on Phil necessarily, just because I thought the Celtics were the better team, and I thought it was crazy that there were so many people saying the Lakers were going to win and whatever. But and I might be a little biased there, but I think the Celtics were just that year they were better. 2010 that wasn't the case. But then so he doesn't even have that many blemishes on his resume. With Michael, he just won all the time, but he had to play Utah twice, and they got into Game 6s and never got to a Game 7. But you know what I mean. So it wasn't like a dummy could have coached this team. You know what I mean? Kind of reminds me a little bit of like Pep Guardiola a little bit, just because a lot of people try to say, oh, they had Michael and Kobe and Pep had Messi, but just because of the small things that both of these guys did, they're up there in terms of historically great in their sports. But I think Phil's number one, and I think Pop would have to win again to overtake him. But if he does with a team without a superstar, I mean, then he probably goes into number one.
Yep. All right. Well, let's get into the playoffs. What's the series I've been most intrigued by, honestly, is the Clippers and Mavericks. Mavericks won a game. Last night was kind of competitive. Out of any of the upsets, I said the Mavericks were probably the most likely to make it because of the talent. Do you think that they have a chance, one, to win another game or even 2 and maybe even force a 7? Or do you just think this Clippers team is that dominant? Because I have a lot of faith in Doncic.
I do too. I had going into the series, I had Clippers in 6, and I'm sticking with that. I think they'll get one more. They'll get one more, but they're not beating the Clippers. They're too good in so many places. Even forget Kawhi and Paul George. They have Montez Harrell. You have Patrick Beverly. You have Lou Williams. I mean, if Kawhi only or Paul George only, the Clippers still probably win it. I think it's like a Game 7 sort of thing. But Doncic is too good to not let this to basically fall after 5 games. So I do think there's going to be a 6 game. I think they'll win one more, but I just don't see the Clippers losing a series, at least now. Maybe I think they're going all the way to the finals, and then we'll see what happens. But I think this will be the most difficult series. And I know.
So you're saying that this is more difficult than if they play the Lakers?
Yes.
Can you give me a reason?
Well, so I've seen the Lakers a couple of times, and the Clippers the Lakers have Anthony Davis. He doesn't play the fourth quarter. He might be on the court. He does not play. He has the worst plus minus among the Lakers, just in the league, and he's great through 3 quarters. So if the Clippers in 4 games can be in front in 3 quarters. They have good. I mean, they have LeBron James, and LeBron is turning to playoff LeBron, and he's great. Really high on my all-time list. But so let's just okay. We have LeBron, we have AD, and then just look at everything else they have. They have Kyle Kuzma, who's whining about not starting games. You have Caruso, who he's a fun story, not a great player. You have Caldwell Pope, not a great. Like the depth is the real problem. If Rondo turns into playoff Rondo, the series goes a game further than it should when those two teams match up. They have the best player, but the thing is, Kawhi and Paul George are great. They're not as good as LeBron, at least right now, in my opinion. But if they have an off game, they can get it from their depth and their bench. LeBron and AD are the best duo when healthy and when rolling, but they're not. The problem is their other pieces around them aren't going to be good enough to beat the Clippers. And I've been on this all season. I don't know when they'll play. I would probably say Clippers in 5. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but I just trust the other. It's not like LeBron versus Kawhi or Paul George versus Anthony Davis. I'm looking at the other pieces. What are they? If Lou Will one day drops 37 in a game coming off the bench, what are the Lakers going to do to stop it? I know AD is defensive. So if those two teams meet up, it doesn't go further than 6. I would say 5, but maybe LeBron will have another playoff moment, so maybe 6. But I don't see a situation where the Lakers beat the Clippers over a series, because now that everyone's together and they're clicking, and the Mavericks are a challenge. They have a big 2 with Kristaps and Jan and Doncic. So I just think the momentum's with the Clippers. The momentum would have the Lakers if they were playing in front of fans. The fact that there's not going to be at Staples Center and 80% Laker fans in the stands, it doesn't help them. And they did lose that first one with the clip to the Blazers. I think they'll win the rest of the games that series, but the Lakers can't shoot threes either. The Clippers can. So it's just like the only advantage they have between the two is they have LeBron James, and that seems to be the only one. If you have if they have Avery Bradley, if he's here, it's a different story, and maybe it goes 6, maybe it goes 7. But still, it's just I'm so concerned with the rest of the team that because I know LeBron is going to get his. I know Anthony Davis at least through 3 quarters is going to get his. So Anthony Davis needs to step up in the 4th quarter. They need to hit their 3 throws. And I don't know, that's not the be-all, end-all, but among all that stuff, they also just the other pieces need to step up. And I just trust the Clippers, other guys more. And that's why I think if they go head-to-head, we'll see what happens. But personally, I think the Rockets give Clippers more trouble than the Lakers. And I'm not saying I think the Lakers are better than the Rockets, but I'm just saying I just feel like the Clippers are easily the best team in the West, and I think they're gonna round 2 will be hit difficult for them, but outside of that, I think they're going straight to the finals.
Magic stole the first game. Bucks destroyed them the second game. I assume the series is over.
Yeah, they're done. Remember how the Bucks beat the Raptors last year and they won the championship? So anyway, no, it was a fluke game. No, it's done. The Magic are an okay team, but they're not hanging with the Bucks. I mean, come on now. Even if Chris Middleton doesn't show up for the next several games, Giannis by himself playing 1-on-5 beat the Magic. So
Magic,
it's done.
Do you think if he doesn't win the finals this year, it's an absolute failure for the Bucks?
Unless probably if they get to the finals and lose in Game 7 against the Clippers or something like that, then I don't think you can view it that way just because the Clippers have the better team and more depth. I don't know about probably a better coach too. I mean, so if they push the Clippers to like Game 7, they lose. I don't think that's a failure. If they go out in like 5 or something, then it's a failure. But again, it's still technically continued progress because they getting to the finals should be their priority. And then once they get there, then it's anyone's game. But I think it puts immense pressure on them going into next season if they don't win the championship. It's hard to say. I think the Bucks should be favored to win the whole thing, even with the Clippers, because the Clippers have the best team and have the best depth and everything like that, but they haven't played together on a consistent basis because of all the load management stuff. So they're not playing together as a team all the time. So that's why I can think they could get tripped up by like a team like the Bucks. But if the Bucks win it, it's not on Giannis. It's on Chris Middleton. He's going to be the key to that because Giannis is going to get you 30 at 10 at worst. So Chris Middleton, who I'm not a huge fan of, he needs to average at least 18, 19 points a game for them to have a chance. He needs to come through in big games. But yeah, I think the Bucks, it's probably a failure, but I don't think they blow up the roster if they don't win it, but it puts so much pressure on them to win it the next season, which it's going to be even more difficult because other teams are going to load up. So this is their best chance to win a title.
Yeah. Do you think we're sleeping on Miami?
Yeah, a little bit. I think they're really good. I don't think they can beat the Bucks. That's the problem.
Yeah.
If they were to be matched up with somebody else in the East, if they had Boston or Toronto or something like that, maybe they could get to the conference finals. But I don't see them making it because Jimmy Butler is great, but he's not as good as Giannis. They may have better other pieces in there, but it's Jimmy Butler and it's the Jimmy Butler show. And I'm not saying they don't have other good players because they do, but he's their one. He's carrying the team. If he's not on the team, I don't know if they make the playoffs. So the Bucks, I think, because they have Giannis, it's huge event because he contributes on the offensive and defensive end. If you have a superstar that's contributing just on one way, then it's a different situation because if you're not playing defense, then it helps. But if Giannis is doing both, it's going to be hard. Jimmy Butler does both too, but I would say it goes deep, but I don't think they're going to beat him. But you never know.
My favorite matchup in the first round, because it's the one I think is going to be the most entertaining. 2-1 lead for the Jazz. Nuggets, I assume, will make it close. Do you think whoever wins the series, because I believe they're the 4 and 5 seeds and the Lakers are number 1, do you think they could give the Lakers some trouble at all? Like, I'm not saying win the series, but like push it to 6.
I like the Jazz. My friend Dane is a huge Jazz fan, so I'm sorry I have to do this to you, man. But if the Nuggets win, they'll give the Lakers trouble. If the Jazz win, sweep.
Really?
I think so. I've seen that. I've seen Jazz Lakers play multiple times this year. They're not going to do anything against the Lakers. They're just not. I think the Nuggets, they match up better with them because they have Jokic. And I know Rudy Gobert is good and great defensively and stuff, and that will be helpful. But he's not scoring from longer than 5 feet from the basket. He's going to be dunking. He's going to be doing a lot of just stuff inches away from the basket. Jokic can shoot. He can distribute. He's pretty good. He's not great defensively, but he can do enough. And they have Murray and other pieces and Harris and their depth is better than the Lakers. Their star isn't. So that's why I think the Nuggets have a better chance. But I still think the Jazz are going to win this series. It's going to be close. But I have the Jazz winning the series, but I think the Nuggets give Lakers more trouble than the Jazz would.
Do you think Michael Porter Jr. is the wild card, though? So I remember in high school when Mizzou got him, everybody in my home state was going bananas. I mean, I know he got hurt, but, it's like the first time we got the number 1 overall recruit. Do you think if he develops even like more what I'm trying to say is, do you think he has the potential in this series against the Jazz because of talent alone to take over a game and steal one?
Yeah. I think it's going 7. That's just me. The teams are so close in comparison because both of them match up with each other so well. I think the Jazz have the best player because Jokic
I love Donovan Mitchell.
Jokic is great, and this is not popular opinion, I think Donovan Mitchell's better. I think he's better. And Daniel will appreciate me saying because he's a big Donovan Mitchell fan. But like Donovan Mitchell is just he is all dog. You know what I mean? And sometimes he's outscored by the other opposing star, but that's gonna happen. He's sensational. He's the wild card here. There's gonna be a game 7 in my opinion, and Donovan Mitchell will be the one to take over game 7. And the problem is if they meet the Lakers, I don't think his ability alone is going to be enough to. They maybe steal a game if they had to play the Lakers in the next round, but so I think it's going 7. I think the Jazz have the best player. They maybe can make it 6 if the Jazz win the next game. It's going 6, but I think they're going to even it up. I think it's going to be a back and forth battle all the way through. But Donovan Mitchell's the key in this series, and he'll be the key for the Jazz all the way through.
Yeah.
I just hope they get past the first round, just because they've struggled and have had to meet the Rockets 2 years in a row, and that's not been kind to them.
No.
So I'm just excited to see the Jazz potentially have it. And then, I don't think they have a chance against the Lakers, but even if they steal a game, it's enough. And it's only because LeBron. That's the key for me. LeBron is just so much better than anyone on the Jazz. And Anthony Davis can play for 3 quarters and have 30 and not do a thing in the fourth quarter, and it still would be enough to beat the Jazz over 7 games. So I think it just makes it really difficult. But Donovan Mitchell he's the best player in this series, and he's why I think the Jazz probably beat the Nuggets in 6 or 7.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the Jazz in 7. I hope it goes 7. But I totally agree. I mean, we're not trying to sound like Nick Wright here. LeBron, I love that. I love watching him play. He is so fun to watch. If you don't believe that he is above and beyond every player in the NBA still, and is the best player in the world, you're not watching basketball. I mean, no offense to Giannis or anything. The guy's 35 and is still – it's like – it's the funniest thing because him and Sidney Crosby, like I know compared to different sports.
Oh, I like Sidney Crosby, so good reference.
Starting to get up in like their 30s,
Yeah.
But they're destroying everybody else and dominating the game. Like those two, because Crosby came in 05, LeBron in 03. Like in both winter sports, we are seeing once in generational talents, and I think people are starting to appreciate it, But honestly, like LeBron, I think he's an alien. He's got another 1 or 2 years at least at this level, and I know he's almost 35. And I think he's going to take over the game, and I think the Jazz are going to score. And honestly, I think they're going to beat the Clippers. I really do. And I think, honestly, and I know it pains me to say it because this man was one of my idols growing up, I think they're going to have some heavenly help in getting to the finals this year.
Yeah. No, I don't mind the Lakers winning it. I just go ahead.
That's who I want to see. And I know you're a Celtics fan, and I'm sorry because the Pacers have no chance, but with how bad of a year it's been to coronavirus, I mean, how bad the year started, and may God rest Kobe's soul because, my God, what a play!
My dream is
Jordan.
My dream is for him to win. Okay, it's not my dream, but I'd like to see the Lakers winning it, and then LeBron winning Finals MVP and like hosting it to the sky and saying this was for Kobe. I want that moment so bad. I just don't think they'd beat the Clippers. That's just the way I see it. But I don't mind the Lakers winning it, mostly because the Lakers and Celtics are rivals, but still, for what Kobe stood for and all that stuff, I want him to win it. And technically, the Lakers won 4 of their five titles attached to a different franchise. So technically, the Celtics would still have more championships. So that doesn't bother me because I just don't view it that way. Because if the Lakers had moved to a different city, they wouldn't have counted the 4 or 5 championships. Or if they called the Lakers something else, the championship that they won in Minneapolis wouldn't have been counted as their titles.
How many did they win in Minneapolis? I think they won like 2, right?
No, like 4 or 5.
Okay.
Because they had Gervin.
If we're wrong about that, I'm sorry. I'll look it up later and put it on make an Instagram post about it.
Yeah, I think it's 4 or 5. So this might be a weird way to look at this, but I don't count those when we're talking about Lakers versus Celtics, because the only reason the Lakers have those titles is because they kept the Laker name. So they went from Minneapolis to LA. If they went from Minneapolis to LA and called them the Los Angeles Dragons or something, they wouldn't have counted those, because if you're not going to count OKC's Seattle championship, you can't count the Lakers for that they won in Minneapolis. So
They won 5. You're correct.
Yeah. So the Celtics still have more titles in reality than the Lakers do. So if the Lakers win one more, it doesn't hurt my feelings that they're gonna technically have 17 championships.
Yeah. Do you think? And I know you're realistic about the Celtics. Do you think though, like by the end of your lifetime, like the Lakers will probably pass them up?
If the Lakers passing the Celtics up?
Yeah.
No way. Because LeBron's gone, and LeBron. Okay, if LeBron wins, so let's just take. So if they have 16. So it's 11 to 18 at 17 at this point, if we're counting it in the actual way. So they would have to win, 5 more, and we would have to not win a bunch. And I truly believe we are going to win a championship with Jason Tatum in this team. So the Lakers may win one before we do, but we're going to win one before Jason Tatum. I would say before he hits 30. So that gives us 6-7 years. And I don't think we win it this year. Probably don't win it next year, but maybe 3 years from now the Celtics will win a championship. But the Lakers, I think the reason I say this is LeBron is going to be great, I think, for another 2 years. I agree with that. And Anthony Davis is going to be great for a long time. But when LeBron is gone and it's just Anthony Davis, if they don't fix the other issues, it's going to look like the Pelicans did when he was in New Orleans, where he's put up 28 and 15, but they're the 7th seed. So they'll need another star to LA if they're going to win something.
And that's if he stays after this year.
Oh, he's going to stay. I don't think he doesn't orchestrate this whole move for him to go somewhere else, because there's not a lot of other places that are going to, I guess going back to Chicago, because that's his hometown team, but they suck. So all due respect. So where is he going to go? He's not going to go to Boston after being in LA. And the only reason he rejected his previous contract offer from the Lakers is because if he waits until the summer, he signs a supermax and he gets so much more money that it made no sense for him to accept it. It was just a formality, and they knew he was going to reject it, so he could take the max deal at the end of the summer. But they need something else to really help him, the both of them. I hope that LeBron can win another one. He's very high on my list of all-time players. I get why some people are not fans, but we're watching greatness, and I think we just need to accept that. So as far as that goes, I think he'll probably win another one. But so here's the thing: if he doesn't win this year, it's going to be increasingly more difficult past year. So this might be, and I'm not saying it will be, this might be his last chance to win the championship, at least in LA, just because there are teams that are going to reload. I think the Warriors are going to be back in this in not a long time from now, especially with the assets they have, and they can use picks and stuff for Andrew Wiggins and other things to try to get bigger pieces. So there are teams that are going to get better. Everyone's going to get better. I don't know what's going to happen in Philadelphia, but one of those pieces could become a trading piece. And what if one of these teams gets Ben Simmons? Then
exactly.
It's more difficult, because this is going to be the hardest championship to win, but it's going to be maybe LeBron's last chance, because I think I would have given the MVP to Giannis because he's had the best season, but LeBron is the best player in basketball. And Nick Wright says a lot of stuff I frankly disagree with. If LeBron had the Chicago Bulls roster, he would still find a way to say that they're better than the Clippers. But he's right in terms of this. If LeBron turns into playoff LeBron in a real way, and he gets just a little help from Anthony Davis, it very well could be so. I just think they match up so poorly with the Clippers, which is why I'm taking the Clippers. But again, this is the best shot they're going to have.
All right, very good. One more series, and I do agree with that. This is it. I think the Warriors will come back strong. They got the second overall pick.
They can trade
Is there-
that to get somebody.
They could trade it or they can draft somebody.
Yeah. For sure.
Raptors, I'm happy they're finally proving it wasn't a fluke and just absolutely destroying the Nets and proving that Kyle Lowry's a great player. Nick Nurse is a great coach. You know, they probably have the best GM in the league. They're one of the most well-run organizations. They do everything the right way. And, yeah, what do you think about them and their chances of getting back to the finals?
Good chance. I think it's a coin flip between Boston and Toronto. But Nick Nurse is the coach of the year. I don't care what anybody says. Because he had Kawhi won the title. Kawhi left. He's the same team. Because they didn't sign anybody big, at least. And they're in the same place they were last year. So if Kawhi is on Toronto, they probably winning it this year. So it's just like, it's incredible what he's done with that team. Fred Van Fleet, I think, has done a really good job. Pascal Siakam is quietly becoming one of my favorite players in the whole league just because he's just special. You know what I mean? The whole thing he had in the finals, that wasn't a fluke either. He's really become a different level of a monster, and he made the All-Star game this year. They have a great coach, they have a great team. The Nets aren't going to even get a game. Kyrie's not even there, isn't he? I don't think so, right?
I don't know.
No, because I thought he refused. Anyway, so the Nets are gone. I just think that the Raptors are going to clean sweep the Nets. They got some nice pieces, but they're just not the team that they're going to be next year. Next year they're going to look a lot different, and they're going to be much more imposing. This year they're not going to be imposing at all. And the Raptors will just go through. They have a good chance in the finals, I would say, to get there. They have to beat the Bucks, which they might match up well with the Bucks actually. So I think Boston, that's the one that's going to kind of determine everything, because I think that's a 7-game series.
Yeah.
I would probably say Boston has the best player in Jason Tatum, but maybe Toronto has a better team in whole. But it's just difficult to pick because you have a great team in Toronto, and then you have Kemba, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown, and then you have guys like Marcus Smart who aren't averaging 20 points a game, but he provides stuff defensively, and he has the ability to lock people up. And then you have other pieces that can hit shots and make threes and get to the basket. And when Jason Tatum and Kemba are rolling together, it's hard for anybody to beat them. So kind of a mix between biased and unbiased here. I think that the Celtics would beat them in 7, but it's really hard to say though, because the teams are so close in comparison. And any team that comes out of this portion probably has a chance against the Bucks. I still think the Bucks will probably make the finals, but it's just hard to say with everything going on. But those two series, that series specifically, is one that you're going to want to watch for just because of everything that's leading up to this. Because the Celtics got rid of Kyrie, the Raptors don't have Kawhi, so it's like one of those series that could really go either way. And I would probably take Boston, but it's hard to say really. I think it's a coin flip.
Yep. All right. 2 more questions before we close up the show today. First of all, is it fair to say that the Larry O'Brien Trophy is the only true world title in sports?
That's the hockey one, right?
No, that's the basketball one.
Oh, sorry.
Stanley Cup. What are you doing?
My bad. I just because I forget that some of these trophies have names. I just think of the NBA finals. Is it the most valuable in sports?
Yeah. Can you call it a true world title? Because like baseball calling it a world title is absurd. The NFL,
No.
American football, anything a world title is absurd. You know, calling the Stanley Cup because of how many great leagues there are over in Europe is absurd. But
Yeah.
all the best players in the world come to North America.
I don't know, man. It's because there's so many big trophies across Europe. It's definitely the most important and the most valuable in American sports. But it's so difficult because it depends on the season and the circumstance. So some years it looks like the NBA's title is the most valuable. Like the LeBron Game 7 against the Warriors, that series, it made it look like that was the biggest title. But then there's some Champions League games that make that look like the biggest title. For sure, it's the biggest in American sports. It's bigger than the Super Bowl because the Super Bowl. Listen, the NFL championship. My bad. So that championship in American football, what happens is you get to the playoffs, and then you only have to win a couple of games to win the championship. So all things considered, with that, it's just like, your Chiefs got through. You won this game, and this game, and then you were champions.
Yeah, and it was a great feeling.
It's a great feeling, and I'm not taking anything away from what you did or what other teams have done, but you only have to win a small amount of games. In the NBA, you have to win
16.
You know what I mean? In the Champions League, you have to win you have to play 6 games and then 2 legs from the round of 16 to the quarterfinals, the semifinal, the final. So both of these 2 leagues or championships, you have so much games to play. Where with the NFL, you just have to win a few. So I think the NFL is out. Baseball, you have to play more, but I don't know. I just don't think it's as big as just based on numbers also than the NBA. Yeah. And even if you could do the number argument against the NFL too, because if you take away the people just watching for commercials, then the NBA is more watched in their championship than the NFL is there. So I would say in American sports, but I think it's still coin flip with the Champions League. And with that, it just depends on the year of the Champions League. Because some years are just like last year wasn't, after that Champions League, we couldn't really say that was the most valuable in sports. But other years, you can make that argument. But I think it's the Champions League and the NBA personally.
Last one. Who wins tomorrow?
Between the Champions League final.
Yeah.
I'm sticking with my original pick, Bayern Munich to 3-2.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go with Bayern 4-2. We'll talk to you either tomorrow night or Monday night on Cannon Snakes the Olympico and review the game.
Okay.
Well, we'll see y'all next week. We'll be doing a lot more college football. We just had to get through a bunch of the NBA stuff today. I mean, it's the most relevant. The playoffs are going on. For any hockey fans, I'm sorry. You know what? I love hockey too, but nobody really cares outside of the 20,000 season ticket holders in each state. I don't care if that makes you sound ignorant. But yeah, so we're talking about probably the 2 biggest sports in the world, the NBA and European football. So yeah, come on, you Gooners. Let's go Pacers, maybe. Win the game today?
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see y'all next week.
See you later.